My name is MagMongoSlade, and I am here to complain about Smackdown. Specifically, Smackdown from August 16th, 2024. We're going to get into this show. There really isn't much in the way of news and notes, so let's just get right into it. Nia Jax Championship Celebration. Started out the show. Wow. What a segment. Haven't seen a segment like this in years. And for that reason, I was actually kind of excited to see it because it's been a while since we did a big dumb skit. You know, usually Triple H doesn't do big dumb skits in the ring. Those things don't really happen that much anymore. So I was excited to see this big dumb skit in the ring. I see the balloons and everything. Pretty Deadly's over there. They got the hair in a bun. They're wearing leggings. They look like women. It's hilarious, right? Tiffany Stratton's there. I said last week, Tiffany Stratton hanging out with Pretty Deadly. I like it. They introduced Nia Jax. Nia Jax comes out. She's on a throne that's being, I guess, wielded by men. It reminds me of Mabel from King of the Ring 95. It's still entertaining. It's still okay so far. It's over the top, which is what I expect. Nia Jax is not thrilled by the setup. Not into the pink thing. Says that her style is more destruction, and goes on to talk about how she beat Bayley or whatever. Tiffany Stratton is very disappointed by this. Then she starts talking about everybody needs to bow down. Tiffany Stratton is included. And Tiffany's like, right now? And Nia Jax is like, yeah. And so Tiffany pitches to Pretty Deadly. Tells them, they're going to sing you a song, and then we're all going to bow down to Nia Jax. And so she pitches to the song, and it is the worst thing. It went from, this has potential to be an all-time silly segment that's going to turn serious as Nia Jax's ego gets out of control. And that flips from, this is literally one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. The audio gave up on this. Not only was the crowd sitting there like, what is happening? But nobody could even hear what Pretty Deadly were saying. I couldn't make out what they were saying. The audio was so bad. For starters, they were out of sync. We already know that they weren't in sync. They're bad singers, which is their heels, that's fine. But we couldn't even follow what they were supposed to be saying because the audio crapped out. And I'm like, what is going on here? So as I was trying to shake this haze out of my head, Mia Yim appeared with a kendo stick and hit everybody with the kendo stick. So that's the end of the segment. And it went from a segment that had a lot of potential to being one of the worst things that they've ever produced. It's one of the worst segments the Triple H era ever produced. A lot of people say it reminds them of Vince, and that is true. This is a very Vince McMahon segment. And the execution, not good. I mean, this is up there with, the Lashley Sisters segment. I think the This Is Your Life Bayley segment. This was a huge mess. All the players involved had the potential to make this something interesting, especially with Tiffany Stratton trying to show more of her personality. You're also trying to drive the wedge between her and Nia Jax. And you got Pretty Deadly in there so that people can take bumps and that kind of thing. And then there's the of course, the threat of, is Tiffany going to turn on Nia, that kind of thing. But the execution of the song segment was really bad. It was so bad. It was awful, bro. Top 5 worst segments of the last 5 to 10 years. Legit terrible. It was awful. There's no saving it. And then they decided to double down and make it worse because they gave Mia Yim, a title match after this. So Mia Yim attacks Nia Jax with a kendo stick, attacks Tiffany Stratton with a kendo stick, attacks Pretty Deadly with a kendo stick, and she gets a championship match next week. When was the last time Mia Yim won a match? She obviously doesn't have the Kevin Owens morality. He's look at my win-loss record. And she's kind of like, I lose all the time, but I'm going to get a title match. Hell yeah. Oh my word. Even the outcome of this thing ain't good. This is all bad. This is not good. So backstage, they got Naomi, Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about Jade Cargill. There's been some discourse around Jade Cargill over the last week, specifically in how she hasn't really been utilized, or she's been working matches, but they've been about the same length. She's been in the business for a couple of years now, and she still can't work a 20-minute match or a 15-minute match by herself. So a lot of people are just kind of like, she was better booked in AEW, where all she did was Goldberg squash matches. And it's like, well, I want to say the same thing I said about Goldberg. You know, I wasn't online. I was online, but kind of not, in 2004, 2005, when people complained that Goldberg matches weren't very good because Triple H was trying to force him to work 15, 20 minutes, sell, and all that kind of stuff. Anybody looks good if you go out there and you crush people in 3 minutes. You know, you have to be believable in that role. That's why it worked for Goldberg. That's why it worked for Ryback. And it worked for other people who have had similar gimmicks, with the exception of Crimson. If you look the part, and then you go out there and you execute people who are absolutely smaller than you are, you look great. But that doesn't have much in the way of power in the long term. Because eventually even that becomes somewhat boring. You have to introduce threats so that people can get behind you, and that implies sympathy and things like this. So WWE could book Jade Cargill the same way that Tony Khan booked her, which is to throw various NXT talent in there for her to beat in 2 minutes, and she could have been undefeated for 2 years or whatever, and could be world champion right now, which she probably would be if Vince was in control. She'd probably be world champion right now. But people still be complaining because she wouldn't be showing anything. I think it's a complex situation. Like, she's probably never going to turn into whatever Japanese female wrestler they have in their mind. She may end up being more like the girl version of Bobby Lashley or the girl version of Lex Luger, who is decent but not phenomenal. She's a great athlete. She looks the part. But putting the wrestling match together, she's going to need some help. She's going to need to be in there with somebody like Bayley. She's going to need to be in there with somebody like Charlotte. She's going to need to be in there with somebody who can bump and feed and guide her through the match. And that hasn't happened yet. You know, she hasn't had somebody, even when she was in AEW, she hadn't really had anybody who could take her by the hand and guide her through 15 minutes. Like Flair did with Sting, or Flair did with Luger. You know, they don't have that stuff in the women's division. She hasn't had that yet. If she was working with somebody like Becky Lynch, she would probably be a lot better right now. But considering most of the people that she's wrestling, they're more worried about protecting her aura and how she looks. Sure, she can go in there and do 15 minutes with Alba Fire, who could probably carry her that entire time. But are people really going to believe that it takes her 15 minutes to beat Alba Fire? No, nobody's going to believe that. So why would you even book that? It doesn't make sense. So then from that perspective, I actually agree. Jade Cargill has not really produced at all, and she hasn't really progressed at all. But that's to be expected. WWE is building her up slowly. And I think most people recognize what's going on here and why this is connected to the Nia Jax story. They pretty much told you back at the Royal Rumble that they're going to do something between Nia Jax and Jade Cargill. That's the visual that they want. So I think a lot of the AEW fans, they're like, she's been in WWE almost 2 years. She hasn't done anything. She's been a tag team champion. She hasn't done anything. You're right. But you can see that Triple H has planted the seeds already that Nia Jax, being the world champion right now, is merely the setup for Bianca to beat. Not Bianca, because it's not going to be Bianca. It's going to be Jade. Jade's going to beat her. All right. Is it going to be Royal Rumble, WrestleMania next year? I don't know. I don't know if you want to have Nia Jax have the belt that long. And she might end up having the belt that long, if we're being honest. But the idea is to set up Nia Jax as this unbeatable monster, the female Yokozuna, and then to have the female Lex Luger, but this time actually have her win the title. So you can see that being set up right now. And the year 2 is typically when, and this is kind of how it was under Vince, usually that second year is when the wrestler kind of starts finding himself in WWE. Jericho, year 2. The first year, he was on and off the show. And if you don't really find your footing in year 2, you could pretty much cast your bucket into the sea. It's over at that point. But if you have any sort of talent, or if they have any sort of plan for you, it's going to take a while for it to set in. And then they start getting the ball rolling. Once they see what you can do, and everybody gets used to you, the audience gets used to you, and that kind of thing. So I respect that people are mad about Jade Cargill's booking, and they're mad that she isn't put on the same plane of existence as she was in AEW. I can respect that. But this is long form storytelling. This isn't, because Jay's not losing. I don't think she suffered a pinfall loss yet. I think when they lost the tag team title, they weren't even beaten. So they're playing a real long game with her. And sometimes you have to let things play out. I know that that's kind of cliche, and I know people don't like that, but that's kind of how it is. Especially when you can see the long game. They told you already, the Nia Jax, Jade Cargill thing is going to be a while before we get there. It ain't going to be immediate, because Triple H likes to drag things out. So it's going to be a while. I'm far more upset about what's going on with Bianca and the Biancification of Jade Cargill, because they're trying to become like they're the same person, and I don't like that. I know that, black women, they're the black girl joy and all this kind of stuff. I'm just kind of like, Jade's a different person than Bianca. I don't think they should be talking the same. They can dress the same, they're a tag team, but there's a certain level of, there needs to be some separation between the two. They shouldn't be this much in terms of personalities, the same. But they were hanging out with Naomi, and they ended up making fun of Carmelo Hayes for losing to Andrade twice. And Carmelo Hayes was like, "But you watching my match, though." And I'm like, well, he's got a point there. But you can't lose in front of the baddies, so he didn't. Carmelo Hayes defeated Andrade. This match was long, and I'm just going to say this. I didn't care about it. I don't care. They're not feuding over anything. And this is the third match in 5 weeks or something like that between these two guys. You have to spice this up. There's something has to shake here. This can't just be, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. I got more wins over you than you have over me. And then they're trading wins back and forth. That's how you know that this thing is mid-card is all hell. Because it doesn't matter who wins or who loses. You're not winning or losing anything. And the idea that Carmelo Hayes, cost Andrade a chance at being a United States champion. Well, that would be fine if he lost the title match. But instead, he lost a number one contenders match. Which, I guess is fine. Whatever. I don't want to watch Melo versus Andrade anymore. I mean, it's a good match. Great athletic guys. But I don't want to see this anymore. And it's certainly not over, because they brawled after the match. And they had to be separated by various officials and all this stuff. Blair Davenport defeated Naomi. A lot of people complained because Naomi lost in her hometown of Orlando, which was too bad. But again, 50-50 booking. She beat Blair Davenport, what was this, like a month or so ago? So now Blair Davenport beat her. Going nowhere fast. Grayson Waller, he's with Austin Theory, and Grayson Waller feels like Austin Theory threw him under the bus, but decided, you know what? Kevin Owens is a bum, and I can beat him. This is going to be an easy dub. Kevin Owens, of course, overheard this and started being a smart ass, saying, oh, this is going to be so easy. You're right. I am a bum. I am a loser. You know my win-loss record. Let's go out there and prove it. And then, of course, he beat Grayson Waller, because heavens to Betsy, we can't have Kevin Owens be serious. The only time I actually liked Kevin Owens is when he was serious in NXT. And he's been this for like the past, I don't know, maybe 6 years. This is terrible. This is awful, man. I cannot stand, do not like Kevin Owens. Don't like him. Don't like him at all. Santos Escobar, he's very serious. He's a very serious competitor. Talking about Legado del Fantasma getting complacent, and they're too used to getting disrespected. And he says that Legado del Fantasma isn't just a name, it's a legacy. And he's going to, of course, expand that legacy by winning the United States Championship. This was a backstage segment with these guys sitting around the dinner table with wine and champagne and all this kind of stuff. Very cool visual. I like this. This is typical Escobar. This is good. But this is mid-card is all hell because Escobar hasn't been put on a pedestal like most other guys have. LA Knight comes out, said that Escobar is trying to be like him, and he says that the nation's champion is being called trash by Santos Escobar, and he says that this trash is going to put him on his ass. Okay. LA Knight cut a promo in person. Okie dokie. I guess. Okay. Anyway, moving on. The Street Profits defeated DIY in a very good tag team match to certify that they're the number one contenders for the tag team titles. I'm not really a big DIY guy because of Johnny Gargano, but this was a hell of a match, and it shows really that the Street Profits have been guys that have been overlooked for a long time. And it's glad to see them getting some steam behind them again. Also very glad that they got the original theme song back, because heavens to Betsy, that other theme song they had was awful. Especially that thing when they were trying to team up with Lashley. It was no good. Not good at all. So Street Profits defeat DIY. Great. So they're going to lose to the Bloodline next week. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Speaking of the Bloodline, throughout the evening, we kept getting short segments with Solo Sikoa staring at the Ulafala. He told Tama Tonga that if Roman Reigns could take that from him, then he will acknowledge Roman Reigns, and so will Tama Tonga. Basically telling him, look, you're going to have to acknowledge Roman if he takes this from me. And the final segment of the show is Solo Sikoa in the ring, demanded that Roman Reigns come and take the Ulafala from him. Roman Reigns then comes out. Solo gives the Ulafala to Tama Tonga for safekeeping, and then him and Roman fight. Then, after Roman kind of starts winning the fight, Tama Tonga jumps in. Roman beats up Solo and Tama Tonga. Roman spears Solo, puts the Ulafala on, much to the happiness of the audience. And then he's attacked and thoroughly assaulted by Jacob Fatu. Then he's triple powerbombed through a table. And they beat him. They beat his ass. You know, they didn't have that other bum. What was this? Tongaloa. He didn't show up. He didn't make an appearance on this show. He didn't screw this up. But Jacob Fatu showed up wearing a boot. So that shows that even with 1 foot, he's the baddest man walking around, which is great. Roman sold it perfectly. Even the visual of him having his eyes pop wide open. It was fantastic. And you got to give these guys credit for showing up, knowing that, you know, Alpha passed away just a couple hours before this show, and they all still showed up. You know, it would have been easy for Roman to be like, I'm not going out there, my uncle just died, you know. But everybody showed up. They did their part. It was great. And you know what? The best thing about this whole thing is that Roman's not talking. You know, people have complained for the last couple of weeks, years actually, don't talk about weeks, for the last 2 or 3 years, that all Roman does is talk. But his last 3 appearances have featured no words. It's just been Roman coming out and beating up Solo Sikoa. That's really what it has been. He just came out and beat him up. We know what it's about, so we don't need to be told. And we know how Solo feels. You know, he's telling us. And this is a situation that's easy for everybody to understand. The sacred Ulafala means something to Roman. He wants it back. It tells everybody that he is the one true chief. You know, the original tribal chief. And the idea being that Solo wants to take that from him. It was set up a long time ago when Roman said that Solo was next up. He was the heir, the tribal heir. And this is a situation where, you know, you've seen this in medieval politics or something like that, where the young prince tries to kill the king, thinking that the king is weak and old, only to find out that it's not as weak and old as you thought. So it's a simple story for everybody to follow, and the Ulafala matters. I know a lot of people they have a bad attitude about the Ulafala and the friendship bracelet and all this kind of stuff, and I get it. I saw the video from Big Nasty, who talked about how these items have more meanings than some championships. He's specifically talking about the AEW championship, but they could be applied also to the Intercontinental title, to the US title, to the TNT and TBS titles, to the TNA World title. It could just be applied to pretty much every championship. But that's because these things not only have emotional investment in them, but people care about the characters that are fighting over them. People care about Roman. People care about Punk. They care about Drew. They care somewhat about Solo. And they care about the stories that these things are involved with, and so that matters. That's important. It's not really the item itself, it's what the item symbolizes to the person who is trying to get it, and what it symbolizes to the person who has it. And these things are incredibly important in wrestling. And it shows you, now again, it's an issue with these things overlapping, because that just goes to show that Triple H kind of has the Tony Khan problem, where Tony Khan will sometimes have multiple of the same story running at the same time. Triple H does the same thing. He'll have multiple factions arguing with each other and getting ready to collide at the same time. So now he has two inanimate objects, two top stars involved with this emotional story of this inanimate object. But we're telling the story with Roman is that we're rebuilding the original bloodline. So I like this. We're still waiting for Hikuleo to show up. Still waiting for Jimmy, and they're going to rope Jay back into this thing eventually. So there's still a lot more gas in this thing. The only problem, of course, is that Jacob Fatu is seen as the only one with any level of competence in terms of the new bloodline. Everybody else is getting their ass kicked. But Jacob comes in, crushes Roman, easily, even though he attacked him from behind. But he crushes Roman pretty easily. And they put him through a table, which is pretty cool. But now he's in the hole. He's got to crawl his way out. He's going to need some help. So now we begin the rebuilding of the original bloodline. But this also does a really good job of taking Roman off the table for Bash at Berlin. He's probably not going to be there. Solo's not going to have a match at the show because apparently Triple H forgot to book him. Or they just feel like Solo had his match, he had his run, it's time to move on. Which, if you write Roman out of the show for another 3 weeks or so, that's the story that you could tell, is that they got rid of Roman. They took care of that problem already. And then this, of course, leads to other people coming back. So that's SmackDown. The Roman segment clearly was great. It's usually the best thing that they put together. And its simplicity tells everything. But the rest of the card is kind of meh. The Women's Tag Team Championship feud is basically just Jade and Bianca saying that they're going to win it. You don't see the champions at all. They're not appearing. They don't do anything. LA Knight came out and cut a promo on Santos Escobar, but it was short. It didn't really add any heat because there isn't much of a feud between these two guys. And so it's just LA Knight talking trash. The Women's Championship gave birth to one of the worst segments in recent memory. But it wasn't the fault of Nia Jax anyway. It was the fault of the audio and Pretty Deadly. So it was what it was on that front. And it's just unfortunate that Tiffany Stratton was involved with that. There wasn't much on the Cody Rhodes front. He came out, after the match with Kevin Owens, where Kevin starts, of course, fighting with Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. And Cody came out to help him. That's not really doing much of anything. A lot of people are starting to get on Cody Rhodes' case too. And Sam Roberts, believe it or not, was the person kind of spearheading this thing in terms of what's going on with Cody's feuds, which is, Cody's not booking himself, by the way. But I've seen articles where people are starting to say, all right, we're in a lull with Cody. He hasn't been put into something that's incredibly hot. He's had the big match with AJ Styles, which everybody liked and thought it was great. Logan Paul, great match. Everybody thought it was great. But nothing that took Cody to the next level. And this is part of the story where, and they lived happily ever after. Like, most people think that you want to know what happens at the end of the story after the hero saves the girl and they get together and they kiss. You think you want to know what happens afterwards, but whatever happens afterwards is supposed to be just happiness and boredom. But that's not how it works in wrestling, right? You have to see what happens after, he saves the princess. After he wins the title, now it's like, okay, what next? And the what next is supposed to be, there's another dragon to slay. But he kind of already did that, because Solo was supposed to be like the next dragon for him to slay. That was the next big feud for him to be in. That feud happened at SummerSlam, and now there's no next level. There's nobody after that, which tells me that Kevin Owens is probably going to turn heel. And he's got to, I believe. I said last week, he's been a babyface for far too long. And I think that is what they're going to bank the fall on. That Kevin Owens turning heel is going to intrigue people for the next several months. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case, but that's where they're going to go with, I suppose. And I guess it's worth a shot. They're not going. They insist on not using anybody with talent. They just insist on using Kevin Owens. So it is what it is. Most people have started to complain about, Kevin Owens has been in 10 title matches. He's lost them all over the course of several years, and enough's enough. And I've been saying that since before he got the first one. Before he wrestled Roman the first time, I was like, I don't really see Kevin Owens being a top contender. He's just a blubbery mid-carder as far as I'm concerned. But then again, that's just me. But they're going to put their money behind Kevin Owens turning heel being the big story throughout the fall. That sets up Cody to be Hogan, and this to be his Paul Orndorff, where, they're going to be friends for a while, and then Kevin Owens turns on him viciously and leading Cody and Kevin Owens into a violent feud going through Atlanta and all this kind of stuff. Maybe that's what they're going to do. But it's not going to help Cody at all. I don't think it's going to heat up Cody. But Sam Roberts' critique that Cody's been in these feuds where he respects his opponent has been boring. And it's like, yeah, it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been, but this is what happens when you have the superhero saves the day and you don't immediately have another story ready. Or you think you do, but you kind of don't. So Cody is secondary to whatever Roman is doing. And Roman is actually, as usual, of course, outshining everything else on the show. So Cody looks second rate because he's feuding with a souped up mid-carder in Kevin Owens. So I know they've been trying to make him a main event guy. Oh, he main evented WrestleMania. Kiss my ass. Kevin Owens is not a main event. Nobody believes Kevin Owens is going to win this title. It's face versus face, for starters. Secondly, nobody believes Kevin Owens is going to win this title. It would surprise me, and might save Cody, if Kevin Owens did beat him for the title by turning heel. If he does to Cody what he did to Sami Zayn in NXT, which was over 10 years ago now, I think, or approximately 10 years ago, it might actually work. If he was to snap and then try to murder Cody at Bash at Berlin and walk out with the title, that might actually do wonders for Cody. Because now he's not the champion anymore. He's back in the chase position, which is what's great about baby faces, because you can't book Hulk Hogan like Ric Flair. It's just not the same thing. And that's what Cody's trying to do. He's trying to be Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair at the same time. It doesn't work like that. Hulk Hogan was a superhero. You have to feed him heels to fight, which means they have to be dastardly, villainous, people that haven't been, on long losing streaks, or people who haven't been meaningful main eventers in months. You can't do that. What made Hogan work is that it was monster after monster, you know, or somebody a backstabber. So you have trash talker like Roddy Piper, then backstabber Paul Orndorff, then monstrous King Kong Bundy, and the even more monstrous Andre the Giant. So he constantly had dragons to slay, and you could drag these things out for long periods of time, and people would get excited at the idea of how Hogan is going to overcome this new threat. When nobody's being positioned as a threat to Cody, and nobody is believable as a threat to Cody due to their prior booking or even current booking, then it falls flat. And it's the exact same situation that happened with CM Punk when he finally won the title and was given a long run. Same thing happened with Danielson when he won the title at WrestleMania 30. And everybody was like, oh yeah, yay, the Yes Movement finally got what they wanted. Same thing happened to Kofi Kingston with Kofi Mania. There's that lull where the babyface finally achieved. Now what? And they don't have the answer for that yet. And that's a problem. That's an issue. And it's not an issue I think they're going to be able to fix convincingly before the Royal Rumble. And again, this is a company that decided there was not going to be a pay-per-view between Survivor Series and Royal Rumble. So if everything stays the course as it is right now, you're talking about from November to January with no pay-per-view. You can't even hot shot somebody from that perspective. Oh my God, this is going to be rough. If this is going to be the thing, it's going to be Cody and Kevin Owens. It's going to be rough. Unless somebody slides in and saves the day. Maybe they try Jacob Fatu later this year or something. But it's not looking good for Cody. But let me know what you guys think. And I'll talk to you guys later.
No one does it better.